Hey guys, welcome to the Friend of Sinners podcast. We will be discussing Can Christians Drink? This is going to be covered in 2 episodes. The first episode, we will be interviewing a new friend of ours that's going to give us his story about his past with drinking alcohol. And in the second episode, we're going to get a deeper dive into what the scriptures say about drinking and alcohol and how that relates to us and our walk in the Christian faith. Stick around to find out more.
Welcome to the Friend of Sinners. I'm your host, Andrew, and today we just want to continue off with our new series, Can Christians? And so today we're going to engage in the question, can Christians drink alcohol? And just before we get started onto that, we're going to have our guest here, Alex. Sorry, say your name.
My name is Alex. I'm a Christian man for many, many years who has been...
What's the full name? I want to hear your full name.
Alexander Viktorovich Baigulov.
That's super cool.
It's a lot of syllables.
I was born in Soviet Union.
Okay.
That later on became Russia because Soviet Union fell apart in 15 different states. So I was part of Russia, and I was born in the Western Siberia. Way out, yeah.
It's chilly.
Mm-hmm.
Gets chilly sometimes. Yes.
When was the last time you were there?
Yeah, so we moved here in 1998.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Who's we? Is that you and your family?
My majority of my family, yeah. Initially, my brother and one of my sisters stayed back due to the age, because not everybody could immigrate. And so they stayed back. Then my brother moved later on, a few years later, and my sister still lives in Russia in the same city.
Was it because they were older?
Because they're older.
Yeah. Okay.
You couldn't move here if you were over 21, because you would consider an adult. And if you're an adult, then back in the day, I don't know how about now, if you were over 21, you would consider as a separate family. So you would need to go through the whole process of waiting and stuff, because it's not as easy as crossing the border.
Yeah.
We waited, I think, 7 years for an appointment.
Wow.
And back in the day, where everything was basically paperwork, you couldn't really, no internet, no phones, none of this worked, right? So you had to fill out paperwork, send it out, and essentially wait and hope that paperwork made it, because a lot of times it didn't. If it had anything United States on it, stamps or anything, it would not make it, because curiosity would take over people and they start opening up documents, you know what I'm saying? So, but everything made it. And I think initially my family filled out back in 1991, right after fall of the Soviet Union, and then we were able to come in to the United States. I am a refugee. So some people don't.
Did you guys come to Florida?
No, I initially moved to Springfield, Massachusetts, and then when I was 19, I moved to Miami.
Okay.
When I was a teenager, just to move out of parents' house, type thing. You
to
know,
Miami, of all places.
Miami, all the places. I lived in Miami Beach. It was nice. It was good.
How long were you there?
Not long, about a year.
Yeah.
And then I moved to this area, where I actually met my wife. I thought I was going to stay here for only maybe 3 months or something, because when I moved initially to Northport area, there was nothing there. I mean, we're talking internet didn't work, phone didn't work, dirt roads.
And this is in the U.S. too.
This is in the U.S., yes. And I was basically in shock. I was coming from Miami to this was pretty astonishing to me. And I thought there's no way I could live here. But I met my wife in church, and she was singing in the worship team, and I was leading the worship, playing guitar, and this is how we met. And
the rest is history.
The rest is history. We've been married for 18 years now.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have
Good
a teenage daughter, and we have a son and another daughter.
Cool.
So 3 kids now. Yeah.
What's the youngest?
Youngest is 12.
12. Okay.
How's the feel to have the 16 driving? Is she's driving, right?
Horrible. It is horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you receive phone calls in the middle of the night. Hey, Dad, I don't know what happened, but my bumper is missing. And then you know that something went absolutely south.
Yeah.
What do you do for work?
I work in pest control right now.
Okay.
My majority of my life, I was actually in the dental field for almost 20 years. And then I switched careers, and now I do pest control.
Cool.
Why
Yeah.
did you change from dental care to killing bugs?
It's the same thing practically.
Stress levels,
Huh.
which this whole conversation will probably contribute to the whole
Mm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because people don't realize, but in the dental field, a lot of people do drink a lot.
Mm.
Okay. Now, due to stress, it's a very, very stressful job. For me, I was a dental assistant for a very long time. Did the clinical work and stuff. I work with probably one of the best doctors in the world, in the country, here in Sarasota. Then I became an administrative role. I was a practice manager of operations for one of the large companies here, one of the biggest companies probably in U.S. Yeah, it was just stressful. At one point, it was stress / everything else. I would go to work at 6, maybe 5, and then I would get home at 8 p.m.
Mm.
It was not practical.
Yeah.
That's what was stressful, just the amount of work.
Amount of work, how much work, there was a lot. The family issues, because everything was combined with alcohol, which I know we're going to be touching up or talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
When you basically, life became very simple, right? Because I would go to work, and after work I'd get home and get hammered,
Mm.
right? So there was no, when that happens, it's really stressful for whole family and myself as
Adds
well.
to the stress.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And so it just continues. How you sort of just a rolling ball. It's like a snowball, right, down the hill. It just keeps on growing.
So yeah, work contributed a lot to that. But let's go just a little bit before your work.
Mhm.
We're gonna start talking about as far as drinking alcohol. You remember your first experience?
Yes, my first experience was in Siberia. My family was not Christian. Oh, my mom's side was. My father's side wasn't.
What did that look like? Was it mom go to church, take you guys, or?
So, according to the family story, and my mom told me that, I'm the 5th child out of 7.
Oh wow.
Okay, yeah. So my mom, her parents were Christian. She was not initially. She started to go to church after I was born because supposedly my mom lost her daughter before me.
Mm.
Okay, so my sister. She
Mhm.
lost her at the time of birth.
Mm.
So when she was pregnant with me, doctor walked in and said, "You're going to lose him too." And so she was basically praying and saying that if you save his life, I will, give his life to you, essentially. And so she laid straight in the bed for 2 weeks without moving until doctor walked in and said, "You're 2 weeks overdue. You need to give birth." And so she gave birth to me. Why is that important? Because she started going to church after that.
Mm.
And so my father, he wasn't a drinking man. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He smoked initially, which is a big deal in Russia. Here,
Cigarettes. Yeah.
right? It's a very big deal in Russia. A lot of times if you smoked or drank, that you would be considered a lost man, essentially.
Mm.
You have bad habits, right? So he quit smoking. So he wasn't doing it. He was a regular guy who worked in the coal mines. You know what I'm saying? My mom was a stay-home mom. He didn't drink. Now, in Russia, to this day, and, there's this thing where people talk about Russia as bears and vodka. Right?
Yeah.
Which is half true.
Which is half true because, the biggest bear population is in Russia.
I
But
didn't know that.
Really?
yeah, I think so. Bigger than Canada, from what I've heard. I'm not sure if this is. Maybe somebody can write it in the chat, right?
Hey.
Fact check that.
Basically, alcohol is in a lot of households in Russia, including us, but it wasn't like on the table.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a refrigerator because that didn't exist. We had a refrigerator in the condo where we lived, but in the house, it was very primitive lifestyle. No water, none of that. So they had vodka, and the vodka was basically used for things like if you're sick and you have a high fever, you can knock it down like this, right? In a very old school way, you would just put
Grandpa's cough medicine.
No, you would just put alcohol all over people's body. You'll dress them naked. It sounds crazy. It works. You put alcohol all over their body, and you put a cloth over them until the cloth starting warming up, and then and the Russian people that listens to this probably they'll know what I'm talking about, and they'll rip off that blanket, and you just take a towel, start blowing over people, and the fever disappears instantly, like
Wow.
instantaneously. So for that reason, a lot of homes do have vodka. But my earliest memory, the reason why I was bringing up this whole story is because we had vodka in our house. I specifically remember it was hidden away, and it didn't have had a lid on it. It was just, I remember it was chunk of wood just wedged in there and like hidden behind. And I remember I saw it, and I took it and I brought it to like this field where a bunch of kids were playing around. I was probably 7,
Wow.
very, very young.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this was the first time I tried it.
Do you remember why you just did it? Were you just curious?
Just a curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of kids, because almost like this thing, because you hear people drink and, oh, you cool.
Mm-hmm.
Early days.
What was the
with
result
alcohol.
of that time when you took that bottle out in that field? Was it?
I did not remember having anything. It was a little sip or two. It was disgusting, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the
Vodka
first time.
vodka straight. I even remember the name in the picture. It was pshenichная. I don't know how to translate it, but psheno is what you made wheat vodka,
Mm-hmm.
I think, right? Weed, whatever you make bread out of.
Wheat.
Wheat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was made out of wheat.
Hmm.
And I remember the weed growing and the little beautiful picture
Yeah.
on it
Mhm.
and everything. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I don't remember having any side effects.
Yeah.
I had like a sip or two. I remember it was absolutely disgusting. I couldn't understand how people drink that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely gross. And I left the bottle there because the teenagers, the guys that were a little bit older than me, then they took it, and I remember them drinking it, and then they chucked the bottle and all the stuff. I remember. And I remember I just left because I don't know if I think I got scared because I didn't want to be found out that I took it, but nobody ever asked.
You mentioned you weren't like a Christian yet at that point. At what point did you like start going to church or started becoming a Christian? Because I mean, I'm assuming have you like been drinking alcohol regularly since then, or just
When I was coming to the United States, for me, it was an opportunity to start everything from scratch. Because you already realize when you're 14 what you're doing wrong and what you're doing not wrong, right? You understand that when you're coming home somewhat wasted and parents find out, you're not going to be in a good state. And Russian style dads of 90s, they were pretty ruthless. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I remember.
let's bring those days back.
I remember specifically coming home. I think I was 13, and in the whole block, the big building, 5-story with hundreds of, condos, only my condo light is on, and it's 3:00 at night. I was 13 years old. I walked through the door, and I knew my father wasn't sleeping. And I remember I just ran to a kitchen and start chugging pickles in to kill the taste or the smell of alcohol. All
Not
right.
suspicious.
Yeah. So, but going back to the thing, after I basically came to the United States, I had I wanted to give my life to Christ. I really did. As a matter of fact, when pastor called out for repentance, right? I really, in my heart at that time, that was back in 1999. And before that, it's not that I just wanted to do it. God was really touching my heart. Like I would sit there randomly in church and just like a guy would preach, and it would really touch my heart. I was like crying, right? And I remember on January 3rd, I believe it was a Sunday, I was basically praying, God, I don't want to come out now. When next time when there's a call out, I will definitely come out and give my life to you, right? So on that Sunday, the service was over, and the pastor goes, everybody have a great night. And I'm just standing there like, God, I thought I was supposed to come out today. What happened? And the guy leaves, and then he comes back. He's like, wait a second. And he turns the microphone back on. And he goes, there's people in this church who wants to give their life to Christ today. And I ran.
Wow.
I remember that
That's
was
so cool.
Yeah, I was like, this is for me. I couldn't believe. I just said, I was supposed to give my life to you today. What's going on? And and literally he comes back and says, there's opportunity right now, right? So I go out there and I give my life to Christ.
That's
And
cool.
since then,
I was at 14.
14 years old. Yeah, I right away I wanted to get baptized. I knew instantly that I was going to be in music. Instantaneously, I knew that. And I was in the worship band since age 14. I started going to church. Everything basically started picking up for me as far as Christian, right? So from that time on, I moved to Miami, and my brother had a church there. He was a pastor of a church, and this is the first time when I started playing like lead role, playing guitar. And when I moved to Northport area here, part of the reason how I met my wife was in church, like we talked, is because her father was a pastor as well. Her father actually is a deacon of Bible University in Minsk, Belarus, at one point. And so he was a pastor here in Venice, not so far away from here. We met. Eventually I became youth pastor. I was leading worship. I was, starting as a, Christian career where you preach, where I wanted to do I wanted to learn theology and all this stuff, start taking classes for theology. I was very interested in that, in history, and I was growing in that quite quickly and significantly, and I loved it, every moment of it.
So during all of that growth and pursuit of Jesus, was like when you moved to the U.S., you gave your life to Christ. What happened with alcohol? Did you
disappeared instantly?
Just gone.
Nothing ever. I would not, because here's the thing, in Russian culture, it is extreme taboo. And I don't know if I'm using the word correctly, but and the way I am too, once you dedicate your life, everything else is over.
Should be.
It should be. Exactly. Right. So from using extremely foul language, and Russian has book on that. You know what I'm saying? I didn't use any language. I've never picked up a cigarette again. I forget about drinking. That was never in my mind. Like, we're talking about not dating. I would not, if a girl would approach to me at school and I had, like she would touch me inappropriately, I said, hey, you're shaming yourself. Don't do this. Like, I was very, very Christian. At one point, I was when I lived in Miami, this is a little bit further on, I was dating a girl, and she was not Christian, and she wanted to get close. You know what I'm saying? I was like, there's no way. Like, I was very strict about everything. There's like, it's not happening. I'm Christian. I'm saving myself for a proper girl and stuff like this, for a right girl. And this is why we never, stick together with that girl, I'm pretty sure. But I was very, very, I don't want to say proper, right? But I want to say I try to stay as pure as possible in every aspect of my life. Either it's talking or language, watching the language, from just no bad behaviors, right? In Russia, we say bad behaviors. Do you have any bad behaviors? Or, I try to stay away from all of this. Yeah. Really.
Awesome.
No, that sounds cool. I didn't know you had that like in your like the early stages. Like, that's awesome. Like,
I was.
Like, you were just like set. You were like on a really good trajectory.
Yeah. And I've never. It would never even cross my mind
Mhm.
Forget about it. It wouldn't. I would not be around people like that. There was a couple of times when I went in and I would find myself in a group of people that drinking. I would leave. If
Mhm.
I had to walk home, I would. I would tell people, take me out of here. It's not a place for me. I'm not part of this type of thing. I would not watch that type of movies. I would not. Nothing.
Yeah.
Like really, I'm not interested in any of this. I didn't need any of this.
Yeah.
So what was the turning point? You said it was really stress, and you'd go like home from your really long days and start drinking. Like, was it a slow back in, or was it just a bad night?
So I think it's many different things that led to a specific event.
Okay.
Okay. I remember the date when that occurred. Every man has a breaking point. I don't care how tough they look. And a lot of times people tell me, oh, I don't smile, I look tough. Every guy looks tough. They can be tough as all they want. They all got breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
As a Christian, we all have breaking point. And people, I'm going to bring up something that people don't realize, and you need to have a revelation about that as a Christian person. That, or maybe not, as if people are watching this and they come into church, and I spoke with Andrew about this, and if they think that if you're going to come to church and you're going to see just a cloud of angels and good people, like that don't cuss and all this stuff and nice and they don't judge, you are mistaken. And the reason why I want to bring it up, because church, the way I see it, is a hospital for sinners.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And the way people say sometimes, well, the pastor did this, or this person, or the leader did that. And I say, well, the nurses, do they ever get sick? Probably. How about doctors? Do they ever get sick? Probably. And they try to wear gloves so they don't, right? Or masks so
That's a
they
great
don't.
way to do it.
And so this is how I say it. But you need to have revelation, because I had that where people should not be bad people, right? If you're in church, it's you should be good. You should not be, what's the word?
You should be pious or righteous or something like that.
Like righteous, but at the same time hypocritical.
Okay.
Because when I saw hypocrites, right, people say something and then they do the opposite, that would turn me off really bad. To this day, I have this sometimes. I'm like, okay, relax, right? But I remember a specific event. So how everything started, I play video games a lot.
Woo.
Not much anymore.
I was about to say, still.
Not much anymore. Not much anymore.
What was a lot? Like,
a lot?
Ooh.
yeah.
Ooh.
Like, let's hear a number.
Come on.
Oh man.
World of
The
Tanks.
worst I remember, I played a specific game called Rust for 60 hours straight.
That's a lot.
60 hours straight.
I think you rusted.
I rusted.
You
But
started to rust onto
we're
the chair.
talking, my life was basically, I love video games.
Yeah.
Not anymore. I used to collect retro video games. I still have stacks of them in my house. But my wife would know.
Yeah.
There's certain games I would play quite a bit.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I just finished testing another game because I'm still in it a little bit. The way I used to do it, I don't do it anymore. I can't play anymore like I used to. And I think it contributes to, because I don't drink anymore. I've noticed that after I stopped drinking, I lost interest in a lot of things. But what happened is I was playing video games with my friend, old game, and we used to do like LAN parties. I'm sure he remembers.
Age of Empires 3.
Age of Empires, but this particular was
3 at that
CSGO,
time.
and I had a friend of mine who I would go to visit, and one day he sneaked a beer in. Now, I don't want to blame everything on him, but he had a six-pack in his house, right? And this is what I mean about drinking, that it opens doors. Because some people say, oh, it's not bad. It may not be bad. It definitely opens doors. It tells you that all of a sudden you drink one beer, you say, oh, you see nothing happen, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
Until one time, I remember specifically, I drank too much, right? And he had harder alcohol in his house. I didn't realize that he did, but he was a very good friend of mine, like really, really good friend of mine, that I didn't.
Was this like a Christian
of.
friend or?
Christian friend?
Okay.
Now, one beer sneaked in. I tried it, and then, well, I knew what the beer tastes like. I used to drink it back in Russia. You know what I'm saying? Then he had tequila and stuff like that. And but what it did really, because I wasn't drinking, I never had alcohol in my house. Nothing like. I would be shamed to bring alcohol in my house. As a matter of fact, when I used to work as a dental assistant, somebody used to gift me a bottle of vodka. And I used to call my wife and say, hey, I don't know what to do. I got a bottle of vodka. Somebody gave it to me because they see I'm Russian and it says Russian vodka. And
it works, right?
And I said, I don't know what I need to do. You know, hide the kids when I come home. And she used to take the kids away and I would sneak in the back. I don't know why I didn't do it at work, but I would just pour everything out real quickly and throw the bottle away. But I would never have alcohol in my house until eventually I start drinking like a beer once in a while. Like, you know, there's a good game. I would watch like a game and have a little beer, you know. And my wife used to tell me, hey, what is going on here? Like, because she comes out of very, very strict family household as far as beliefs, as far as all this stuff. Don't come out. But we're talking about breaking point. And I'll be honest with you. And she knows because God had changed her a lot. But she was part of the reason why I started drinking as well. Me and my wife had a really rough conversation about certain things. We exchanged some words, like any family would have. And she said something along the lines that you don't do anything, blah, blah, blah. And I remember telling her, I will show you what it looks like if I don't do anything. And I told her straight up, just like this, from now on, I'm going to come home, I will drink, and I'll play video games. And you will see the difference between this lifestyle and what I did before that. And that was 2015, May 30th. Wow. I remember the date. Because on that date, I had to actually verify the date today because it was my nephew's wedding. And part of the reason as well, and I do want to bring it up because it looked very, and she knows about it. We talked about it and we changed since then. And I think it's important to bring it up. To me, it looked very hypocritical when we were going to the wedding. And she just told me how horrible I was, how terrible of a husband I am, how terrible of a father I am, and all this stuff. And I was pretty upset about it, right? And when we arrived to the wedding, she was trying to hold my hand to show the world how we are such a good couple. And I was like, you know what? This is you hypocrite. I'm not going to sit with you throughout the whole thing. And when we got home, I told her, you watch now. Now, this is what I'm saying. It brings back a little bit. I want to bring it back a little bit about having understanding about hypocrites in church, right? Because everybody could be ill, or majority of the people in the church, there's, you know, it's like a hospital for sinners, right? So was it her fault? I think because I was blaming people, including her, for many, many years while I was drinking. And people don't realize that because a lot of alcoholics I know of that I spoke with, a lot of times they blame something, right? They say something. This occurred because of this. People are doing this, and they cannot bring it back. I specifically remember the date. Before that, I was already drinking. I didn't have a drinking problem, but I would sneak beer in when my wife wasn't. I remember specifically. I don't remember which World Cup it was, but I took like a week off, and I was just I wasn't getting hammered, but I bought all the beer that I could find. I stocked all of the refrigerator, and I was just sitting there all day watching soccer games and drinking, right? When it came down to video gaming, I would just sit there and drink and play. it wasn't a problem just yet. I realized a problem that I really had a problem was a bit later.
Yeah. But like it's so interesting. Like you remember the reason why you had it, or like, and it man, like that's something I didn't even know. Like it's almost like it started off as like a punishment to your wife and a punishment to yourself. Like
yeah, it really was. It was almost like I was upset with somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll show you.
Yeah.
And it turned into a horrible story and horrible lifestyle. I left church like that day, like that was Saturday. Sunday, we always went to church. You had no reason not to. It's a physical impossibility for you not to. Basically, you couldn't not to go. We were very strict about that, and I was like, I'm not going.
She keep going?
She went.
Yeah.
Now, in again, in the Slavic culture, it is very tough, okay? Because if all of a sudden a woman walks into the church without a husband, people ask questions instantly, right? And vice versa. How come your husband just showed up to a church by himself when he's got a family? It's very strict. It's almost like its own subculture in a sense.
Yeah.
But it is. To this day, if I feel sick or I was like, I don't know, man. No, and she goes, oh, don't play with me. We're going. Get dressed.
She drags you, grabs you by the ear, and just no.
I tell her, oh man, there's a Liverpool game. I gotta. No. Come on. So, but yeah, But through that, I think she realized, and the way I know she did realize is the fact I overheard her talking to somebody about our problems now. How we had problems in the past, and the type of respect I overheard towards me, it broke me. It really did. I couldn't believe that she thinks like this now, because back then it was not like that.
Yeah.
And she told me I had to humble myself and had to give myself up to you in a sense, and just leave it in God's hands and see what happens. And she didn't do that in the past. Now, I know it's not culturally correct nowadays. It's tough for a lot of ladies and stuff like that to basically, because when you marry an old traditional style in Slavic, and I'm sure it was like this in United States at one point too, you give your life up to a husband. That's it. There's no ifs or buts. It is what it is. And I think she had a tough time with that. I wasn't maybe a good husband. Well, I wasn't a good husband in a lot of times. It's not a maybe, you know. And so I remember a date when that occurred. And at first it wasn't really heavy. It was just like, I'll have a beer now while I'm playing World of Tanks.
Yeah.
And the grind begins on some random game, or if I'm testing a game, because I used to test a lot of games. And yeah, it was just that.
Yeah.
And start growing a little.
So like, how did you reconcile with that? Like, as you're starting to like realize you're drinking, did you feel like you shouldn't drink as a Christian, or did you feel like,
first
it's
of
not
all,
a big deal, or everyone else does it, so it's
no. I knew I couldn't drink, especially when you go buy a drink. Sometimes, like you go, I didn't go to a liquor store initially. I used to go to like a gas station, just pick up a case of beer, right? First it was just a 6-pack, and then if somebody there were moments where somebody saw me from a Slavic kind of a group of people, and everybody knows each other, right? And that was like really heavy on me.
Yeah, you gotta hide that.
Yeah, I had to hide this. Initially, my kids didn't know. I would sneak the beer in the house.
What about your wife? Did you keep that as a secret, or did she kind of find out pretty early on?
I mean, it was pretty early
Obvious.
on. She could see it right away. And we even had a joke with the kids that I have they used to say, "What's in your plastic bag?" I used to bring in, because initially it was like once every 2 weeks, and then it was every week, then it was it turned to a point it was every day, multiple times a day. It depends. I mean, later on, I've learned how to manage amount of alcohol and how much alcohol I need in order for me to be permanently wasted, right?
Yeah.
And we'll probably talk about that as well. But
Mhm.
yeah, but it was I knew that it wasn't right with God. I knew it wasn't right with the family. I know it wasn't right with myself. And initially I was really kind of hiding it
Mm-hmm.
until at one point I was just like, I didn't care anymore.
Yeah. And like, once you like were hiding it, did you feel like did you feel like that shame was pushing you further into it? Like, did you feel like, oh, I'm already doing this, I might as well just do more, or like,
Sometimes, because it was like almost like I have nothing else to lose.
mm-hmm.
I'm already drinking.
I'm already drinking, might as well.
Mine as well. What is there to hide?
Yeah.
And it was just, at one point it just became irrelevant. Really.
Mm-hmm. How do you measure, like, at what point did you consider yourself an alcoholic? Like, when did you think you're like,
personally,
oh, maybe I'm that guy now?
I couldn't stop myself from not going to a liquor store.
Yeah.
This is the first time I was like,
Something's wrong.
something's off. Something's off. Besides the fact that I was getting sick. Like when you drink permanently, you can tell this in people. The skin changes. The smell of people, it comes through the skin.
Mhm.
The smell of alcohol, it pours through the skin. You eat horrible. Usually when it's contained with a lot of hours of playing video games and not showering for 3 days or 60 hours straight. The whole
Typical League of Legends player.
You can imagine the reek. Okay, and I was that guy, right? It's horrible. I remember that particular time because my wife came up to me like this. She took me. She goes, no. She goes, it's okay. I said, don't touch me. And she goes, it's okay. It's okay. She already had a shower ready for me. She just pushed me into the shower, right? So, but I remember specifically driving and asking myself a question: can I stop going to a liquor store right now? And I told myself I could stop at any time. Right, so just go. And just analyzing myself, because I tend to overthink things sometimes. I was like, I think I have a problem.
You drinking in the morning all day long?
Not when I worked.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's called. I've heard it's called functional alcoholism.
Yeah.
Or when people work all their life and you would never even know that they drink. But I work with people like that. A lot of doctors in dental field, they drink.
So like, you're an alcoholic, but you wouldn't consider yourself like, one of those who like couldn't, who were dysfunctional. Like, you couldn't do anything, but like, you were a working one, you had a family.
On the weekends, it was.
But then
weekends were horrible.
Yeah.
Because basically, as soon as weekends, I tell you what my weekends look like. I would come Friday from work, and it will be all-nighter for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would literally pass out from being drunk in my chair. I would wake up in the morning, and usually people have breakfast. I would drink a glass of scotch, like full. Just chug it down.
Like a shot or something.
No, not shot, a glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big shot.
A big glass.
Just
I'll
little
pour-
shot of vodka.
I'll pour a glass. I didn't do vodka
me or
because
something.
vodka was pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
But I would, a lot of times,
You're Russian.
yeah, I know.
Sasha.
So my choice at the time was scotch or just bourbon, straight up American bourbon, is depending on the money, how much money I had, and because that was a factor as well.
Mhm.
Initially, I would go for cheaper stuff. Then it was become more expensive because I got promotion, which is interesting fact. I started working like a crazy guy, a lot, but I would drink, and that would contribute even more, and I would get into more fights with my wife. I didn't see the family. I would come to work drinking, so the problem would just piling up, they growing bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, what was it like for your kids seeing you? Like, what did you think of like with your kids?
I have no clue.
So there's no relationship.
For majority of their childhood, I don't remember them. And at one point, I had to apologize to them, to say, "Hey guys, I'm so sorry." But eventually, when I went back to church and stuff, I made it formal, where I sat down with them. I explained to them what was in those plastic bags. I apologized, especially to my oldest daughter. Because with my son, we kind of, right now, we share a lot of similar stuff. He's a basic kid that liked motorcycles. I got a motorcycle. He likes to go to the gym. He plays guitars. I played guitar most of my life. We have this thing. I have a great relationship with my youngest daughter, but for my oldest daughter, I think I told you that once. After I went back to church, and I was in the living room and I saw her. She's so tall. I mean, she's 16. She's a young teenager.
Yeah.
Makeup and everything, driving a car. And that was a few years back, though. She was maybe right around 14.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw her, and I was like, I didn't remember her.
Mm.
It was so awkward. Like this, I remember when she was a baby, when she was born, because I was still okay then. And then, like blank, right? And that broke me. That was horrible. I remember I went into the room and I came up to her and I hugged her, and she almost you can feel she's tensed up, and she's like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm just hugging you. I love you, She was like, I love you too. Like it was an awkward moment with your teenager. And it wasn't because she's a teenager and she's so cool. She hasn't experienced that in years. Right? And for me, it really broke me. Like like I said, a lot of guys were trying to be tough, but I remember locking myself up in the bathroom, just whipping for 15 seconds real quick before I washed my face and walked back out, because I was just, I couldn't believe how much I've missed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you drink, I'm telling you, you do not know what's going on.
So is that what pushed you? You said when you got back to church, and then you had a couple moments of realizing I can't not go to a liquor store, and this big moment of with your daughter. Like, what was it that eventually was like pushed you back to church or getting out of alcoholism?
Well, that is basically testimony, and to me personally, I don't remember. I don't believe in a lot of superficial things. I really don't. Everything has to have a reason, and I believe in the supernatural power of God. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
But I never experienced it like this, right? So one of those Sundays, I was drunk off of Saturday. I had a major hangover, and my wife says, "Let's go to church." And I said, "I'm not going. I'm not going no church." She goes, "It's at 1:30." I say, I have nothing better to do. I was going to play video games or something along those lines again.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to church. I arrive there, and a singer that leads worship is playing bass. Right? And that's a horrible thing.
It did not sound good for you, huh?
And I just looked at him. I was like, what is this guy doing? This is horrible. Why is he playing? Because I knew him from before. I've seen him before. Usually he plays guitar, but basically they didn't have a bass player. Now, they didn't know who I was or what I'd done in the past, that I used to lead worship and all this stuff. I came up to him after church, and I said, hey, if you guys need a bassist. At this point, I was fairly not drunk anymore, whatever the
You were
term.
sobering up
I
a
was
little
sobering up. Because usually if I was drunk, I would not even.
God just sobers you up
Yeah.
at church. Or
And
something,
plus,
no?
people didn't really know that I was drinking that much. So they couldn't really tell.
Mm-hmm.
Because technically, if they would have known, I think they would not allow me to play in worship with them. But I say, hey, I know how to play bass. If you guys need a bass player, hit me up. Let me know. So they did a whole, interview with me. They're trying to get out of me who I am. And I think some people vouched for me in a sense because some people knew me. And they said, no, he knows what's up, but he's not a bass player, right? He actually played in the past. He was in different bands and rock bands and stuff. And so they gave me an opportunity to play. But it was very interesting because I started going to church. I was drinking.
I was going to say, did you just lie through your teeth through that thing, or
What's that?
did you just lie through that interview? Is that?
It wasn't because they never asked me if I was drinking or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they didn't ask. I didn't
tell them.
share.
Yeah. I got you.
Now, that's the reality in a lot of churches.
Yeah.
I got an email from my sister-in-law that lives in North Carolina. And I was like, that's awkward. Like, why is she emailing me out of nothing? Like, that's weird. I open up an email, and that's their pastor preaching. And then basically the whole thing is about how you need to stop playing with God, right? And which was interesting, in the morning a lot of time, I would have those thoughts, especially driving to work. Takes maybe 30, 40 minutes. You drive to work, and I'm thinking how I'm going to change my life. And as soon as last appointment of the day is over in our jobs, I go straight to a liquor store.
Just find the same routine you fall back into.
Yeah, and every morning I would wake up and sober up, and I'm thinking how I'm going to change I couldn't.
And then in the afternoon, you go right back.
Go right back to it. And I got that preaching, and I'm listening to it, and it's really breaking me. It speaks right to me. I don't know why she sent it to me. I told her that later. I actually called her about it. I'm like, what's going on? Why you send it to me? She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. But because of this preaching, I pulled over, and I called him. I said, look, I don't know how to say it, but I'm just going to flat out say it to you. I don't know. I said, look, I'm and I mean, through tears and everything, right? I was like, I'm absolute alcoholic. Like, we're talking horrible. And I wanted to put it in perspective. I didn't want him to think that I just have a beer once in a blue moon.
Right.
I get wasted every night. It's been going on for years, like 5 or 6 years now at this point. And he instantly, it takes a right, because I've shared that before with other people, and they think, oh, nah, you're fine. This is good. Yeah, you're fine. Right. It takes a right person. Now, he specifically, Pastor Victor Antipov in House of Mercy in Northport, because especially this is Slavic people we're talking about. And he told me, Alex, this is victory. Right. And I was like, I couldn't help myself. And he started praying. He prayed for me. I prayed. And we said, amen. And I hung up the phone. And it sounds crazy, but green looked greener, if I make any sense. The trees, I felt everything was different. I opened up the windows, and I felt like something fell off of me, right? I came home, and I remember my wife was holding a towel, like after work. I was thinking about it and praying all day. I got home. My wife was holding a towel, and she's just looking at me. And I said, everything's going to change. She goes, what are you talking about? And I remember I took all my liquor that I had, and I started pouring into the sink. And she started crying, saying, are you sure what's going on, Alex? What's happening? And I poured everything out. I went and threw everything out, and I didn't touch again.
Wow.
It's been 3 years.
To this day.
To this day.
When people ask you, is it okay to drink? Like, what's your usual response? Like,
I say, look.
Like, knowing what you've went through now with the
quick answer is absolutely not. So, and then people tell me, well, people in Moldova have wine. I said, you're not Moldovan. That's the reality. I said, the problem with alcohol, in my opinion, like, I don't even drink beer without alcohol. As long as if it says beer, I don't touch it. The problem with alcohol, it opens doors. It really does. It opens doors. And I had people call me and say, hey, what if I have like a cold one on the weekends? I said, I cannot make the judgment for you. But if you're asking me that question, something already triggering it. Okay. I say, I tell them, look, I'm not an expert on that matter. I really not. The fact that you're calling me, it's first of all, it's a victory that you're sharing this with me, because you didn't share this with anybody else before. However, I said, it opens doors for other things. And people say, oh, well, in Bible it says you can drink wine. And I said, back in the day, if you understand, the water was worse than the wine. So that's the reality of these things. So I say, for me personally, I will not drink it. I don't need it in my life. Because to me, I know what it did to me. It almost ruined our family. It ruined our relationship for a short period of time. It almost destroyed my family. I don't remember kids for half of their life. I don't know. I don't even know what it did with my health to this day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what's going to happen later on. I remember waking up with the liver hurting like crazy and everything, my heart just pumping out of my chest and all kind of stuff. Like, I remember my skin was weird, like all breaking out and all this stuff. And I still don't know what it did to me permanently, if it did anything. All right. So my quick answer is no, I wouldn't. There's no need. Although I know a lot of people, especially with our line of work, I see a lot of homes. People have full bars.
Oh yeah, all the time.
They don't, they able to, and I don't know how, but they able to eat a nice piece of steak with a nice glass of wine, and it's fine. This is their culture. If somebody ever asks me that now, I said absolutely not. Stay away. Put it out of your house. Close the doors. There's no Bud Light. There's none of that. And they say, oh, just Bud Light. I said, listen, there's Bud Light sometimes with 6% alcohol in it. I said, that's enough to obliterate you after a couple of drinks. So don't do it. Don't do it.
What about you guys? What you guys think? Can Christians, should
Josh, you first.
What's your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are, I think there's I was just trying to quote it earlier in group that there's a time and a place for everything under the sun, but that doesn't mean everything is good for you. So like you're saying, like, I think that it is okay for people to drink if it's in moderation. I'm very much okay with that. And there's a part where this was talking about like a lot of in Jewish culture you're not allowed to eat certain things and stuff. So this is what this was initially talking about, but I think it goes with a lot of other categories as well. And it's 1 Corinthians. It says, therefore, if food causes my brother or sister to fall, I will never again eat meat, so that I won't cause my brother or sister to fall. It's just like, for you, you're very strong. I do not do this. And I think that's fantastic. And you know that. And that's great. And so if you and I were going to go hang out and I know that you don't drink, I'm not going to drink.
Right.
Like, I think that goes along with it. But at the same time, I think it's okay if I'm out. Like me and my dad, every once in a while, we will just sit outside on the front porch and I will drink a glass of Bailey's and root beer. So
or
that's
just a shot of vodka.
And I think I had a friend of mine who is from Moldova, and he said, I remember, he was just sharing with us, that my grandmother had a bucket, not bucket, but a barrel
or keg.
Giant barrel of wine, and we would just come up and drink off of it. It was wine. In Russian culture, there's something called kvass, and it's basically homemade beer with no alcohol. But I can guarantee you, if it stays too long out, it has some percentage. I went to my grandmother's house one time, and she tells me, hey, Alex, just FYI, I was on the balcony for a couple days. I felt it. You know what I'm saying? But the problem is, my culture, especially kids from the 90s in Russia, because it was absolute anarchy. It was insanity. We don't realize a level. We don't know stopping point. There's no breaks, right? We start, it's over. You know, so.
Yeah, and talking about kvass, like I remember, like people were telling me, like, it's the Christian Russian beer. You know, like kids would have it, you know, and they like,
it's like
a very low alcohol percentage, but like it wasn't even considered alcoholic to Russians.
It's not alcohol. It's like
but
it's like a cold brew. No, not cold brew. What they call it? Like the tea, fermented tea they sell nowadays.
Kombucha.
It's like basically kombucha.
Yeah, basically like that. Darker though.
Yeah, essentially like kombucha.
Yeah, hearing your story, it's like, well, yeah, I feel like the answer should be no. You know, sit in front of you, talking to you. And I think what Josh said is right on. What Paul says there in 1 Corinthians, that, like, we wouldn't drink around you. We shouldn't. That would be wrong, you know, or anybody who would struggle with that. The same thing I think could be said with like having sex outside of marriage.
Mhm.
Like, no, I don't recommend you do that. You shouldn't do that, you know?
Yeah.
But within the confines of a marriage between one man and one woman, yeah, it was designed for that.
You're going back to the time and the place thing.
Yeah, kind of. In the same place in 1 Corinthians where Paul says, all things are lawful, but not all things are good. All things are lawful, but I will not be dominated by anything, is what he says. This whole section that we're doing is really good. Like, can Christians?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to point out that our intention isn't to like ride the line of whether or not Christians should sin, because the answer clearly is no. Like, God hates sin.
Yeah.
He sent his son to be murdered for our sin. So we're not like trying to ride the line of how much sin is okay sin.
Yeah.
But I think we're also trying to show. Well, I think we're just trying to answer a question like, can we drink? And I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Can you drink? That's what I would say back to them. Can Christians drink? And they're really asking for themselves. Well, I don't know. Tell me about yourself. Can you drink? Because what they might tell me, I might say like, no, you really shouldn't.
Yeah.
You can't handle just a glass of wine over dinner.
A lot of times when people asking that question, they're not asking it for no reason.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I had guys call me and they ask me that, and then their moms call me.
They're always the ones towing the line. Like, how far is too far?
Yeah,
Right.
I literally had to Google it. I had to Google it, and I couldn't find an answer.
Yeah.
But the reality is this: if you cannot stop yourself, if it's destroying your life, if it's destroying your marriage, if it's destroying your health, something's off. You need to go see somebody who can help you out, who can listen to you, where you are able to stay victorious over this. And for some people, like I mentioned, with going back to Slavic, Russian, very conservative churches that I attended in the past, during bread and wine, they literally serve wine that is strong. And then we
never missed a communion, did you?
You know what I'm saying? Like you take a double sip, and it's out of same glass. Like here in America, everybody's got their little thing. Over there, everybody you see how they pour it, and everybody shares the same cup.
Yeah.
And so, it just for me personally, because of culture, because of what it did, because I know what it did to my uncles in Russia, and I had an uncle who took his own life. I had another uncle who basically from alcohol, he disintegrated. His body, like, I don't want that. I don't want my kids to be with that. I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I know what it could do to me and what it did to me. That's
and Scripture is so clear too that don't get drunk.
Yeah.
Do not get drunk with wine, for that's debauchery, but rather be filled with the Spirit.
Yes.
Is what Paul said in Ephesians 5. So don't be controlled by alcohol or whatever substance you're abusing, but be controlled by the Holy Spirit. And so I think too, like Paul talks about, whatever doesn't come out of faith is sin.
Yeah.
Whatever does not come from faith is sin. So to someone like you in the faith, like it wouldn't come out of your conscience and your faith to drink. And that would be sin to you. So you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I would feel fine to have a drink at dinner or whatever that might look like. So yeah, I love to, like, I always think of Charles Spurgeon. He like loved cigars, loved smoking cigars. And back then, I think he had like a Sunday service where he had like a guest preacher come in and preach once. And I guess the preacher was just like railing on smoking, railing on it. And then the evening service, Spurgeon preached, and he said something like, notwithstanding, so-and-so's preaching from the morning, I'm going to go home tonight and enjoy a cigar to the glory of God. And like, I think like whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do to the glory of God. Can I drink this beer to the glory of God. Well, you could, but I don't know. Maybe you couldn't because it's not coming out of faith. It's not, your past clearly shouldn't bring you to that place.
But it's like if I go right now to France where they have a lot of wine, and I'll be sitting here and I cannot look at people with judging eyes and saying, oh my gosh, look at all these people in this restaurant enjoying their steak with a very nice old wine.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgusting. I can't do that, right? I have to look with the eyes of mercy. What does the mercy looks like?
Yeah.
Right? What did mercy look like to me? For me was important. For me personally, was important to stop.
Yeah.
Completely.
Totally.
And hey, that works. But
Yeah.
I cannot say, what am I going to go Armenian and start tipping all the wine on the floor? Like, I can't do that, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah.
It's part of their belief, and,
But I think you being the way that you are, that it just stopped. It ended. I know, like, I would say in most cases that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
No.
And I think that's fantastic that you were able
That was
to
insane.
have that experience.
It's God.
And
Yeah.
that should give hope to people that are in that place,
Oh, absolutely.
that God can just end it. Or it might be a slow process, but either
Yeah.
way, you can get out of that spot that
Mhm.
they're in. And
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
To me, I couldn't believe the fact that I had no, because before I couldn't physically stop myself from going to the liquor store. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Physical impossibility, and disappeared
Mm.
overnight. And then speaking, like you were talking about, like I wouldn't drink around you. I went to some concerts with my son, and there were a group of people. We had a VIP, and I had a guy come up to me and says, because he knew my past, he's like, "Is that okay if I have a beer, or you don't want me to have it?" I was like, "Why you ask?
Mhm.
It's whatever you want, man. I cannot stop you from doing what you want to do, but it's not going to affect me in any way." He goes, "Are you sure?" I was like, "I'm positive." And he had a beer. I remember that guy had a beer, and I was like, "That's your life. Yes, that's your decision. That's your choices."
Mm.
I think it's cool of him to
I just remember.
ask.
Yeah, I just remember.
Yeah.
I told
Like, I
him.
find that
I say
respectful,
just
yeah.
watch for the doors. That's all. 'Cause
Yeah,
he-
no, I think that's really important what you're saying, and I really appreciate you saying that because I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it certainly can be. It opens doors.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing all this too.
Yeah.
And hearing the grace of God in your life, the grace of God in your wife.
Yeah.
You have a saint of a wife. The
Man.
fact that you're still with her and she stood by you.
And
Mhm.
that's incredible to me.
Yeah,
That's
praise God.
Unbelievable.
I like that little part where she just walked up and was like pulled on your shirt. That was like so loving sounding.
She's
like,
like-
she was just like, "Come on."
And
Well,
it's
get in the
funny
shower.
that at this time we weren't really talking.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't really had a good relationship at that time.
Yeah.
But she was like, "Okay, we got to do something here." So she went turn on.
Mhm.
She prepared the clean clothes for me.
Yeah.
At least she realized I cannot stop him, but he needs to be. We got to get rid of smell here.
I think it is important though too, like what you were saying though, just real quick, is like like Paul goes so far to say in that section of 1 Corinthians that the way we should be thinking of our brothers and sisters in Christ, whether we're eating meat or drinking around them to cause them to stumble, is why would you destroy the person who Christ died for
Mm.
by doing that?
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, I know Alex's past. I'm not going to have a drink around him. I'm
Well,
just
it's just-
not.
For me, another thing is I don't want to be in a position where I ever see somebody who can look at me if I'm having a drink or something. It gives them to think that, oh, I could have it. That means I'm fine.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
a lot of those alcoholics and stuff and people who's addicted, they really don't know where the line is.
Mhm.
And they're like, well, I guess I can have it because he has it, But for me, it doesn't affect me personally, but I just don't want to be in that position. I don't want to show example
Yeah.
where people would think it's fine, and then later on in life it will destroy their life or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah. One of the questions that comes to mind, like, can Christians drink, is like finding like what is that line of, you being a functional person who can drink, and then like at what point is it maybe unhealthy for you to stop? Like, I think that's more of a better question you should ask is like, is this affecting me? because like I look at this and like you're sharing your story and like, man, I've known you for a long time, and I've known you before I was even saved, and I still went to church at that long time, and then we had that break and I had a break from church, and I wouldn't care, and I wouldn't think much of it, but like just seeing how like where does it affect you, or where would that lead you to? It's kind of a bit scary question to ask, or a scary thing to consider when it comes to drinking alcohol. And so like I'd always caution to be careful. Like one thing I've always kind of learned, and that I've shared with some of the other people, is you're not any worse, or rather, sorry, all the benefits are all the better never drinking alcohol. But if you do, just know like there may be some side effects. There may be something that comes with that. Yeah. But if you don't, you have like a ton of advantages. Yeah. And so, any closing thoughts? Anything you guys want to say?
No, just
All
really
right.
appreciate your openness.
No,
man.
that's awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Dude, I love that. I love hearing what you had to say, and I seriously find this so encouraging. Like, if it helps me, like just hearing that, and like even this month, like after you sharing, like I stopped drinking for a little bit, and I'm like, I'm starting to feel like I'm having that little craving. I'm like, I didn't even think I needed alcohol.
I just want to add, for those that are going to be listening to this, perhaps, because I've had that before when I shared it among Slavic communities. Some people contacted me. The reality is this: if you thinking you need help, you need help. And the biggest thing is to break through and to acknowledge the problem that you have, and you have the problem. You are the one who stop blaming. One of the fears that alcoholics have is that if I don't drink, does that mean I'm never going to drink again? Yes. That's exactly what that means. And you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. I do not crave the taste anymore. I thought, am I going to be able to drink, my R bag again, or whatever? That is correct. That's fine. Let it go. For some people who doesn't have a problem with half a beer, it's fine. For you, it is time. It is time to find a person, go seek, and don't think that your neighbor Jimmy or whatever who's sharing the bottle of vodka with you is going to help you. He will not help you. You need to go and seek help. Talk to the pastor. They will pray with you. They will guide you. They will, hold a victory flag with you. It helped in my life when I called a right person at the right time. He said, man, that's a victory. We hugged in church. When I got to church, he hugged in church. He shook my hand. That was absolutely breakthrough, and that's what this person needs, whoever listens to this, because that's what I needed. And it was constant blame about somebody else. It is not somebody else. Let it go. It is you. It is you. Gotta let it go. So that's important.
It is.
So awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I love how we just kind of tackle this little question. I just felt like this like different little approach, with the story and with an example. And so thank you guys for listening to us. We hope to continue on with the series, asking some more questions of, can Christians do what? Blank. And so stay tuned, stick around, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in our episode. Just a reminder that this is a 2-part episode, and so next week we're going to dive into a deeper discussion of, can Christians drink alcohol? Stick around.